Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you join us from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing what you should know about cybersecurity. Our guest today is Daren Dhoray. Daren is an IT professional with over 20 years of industry experience, and he is the founder of CyberSafe TT Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization with a mission to educate students, parents, teachers on safety, cyberbullying, internet addiction, and social media etiquette, which is such a very important conversation right now. He also holds a BSc of Computer Science and Management at UE, as well as an MA in Creative Design and Entrepreneurship. So let's welcome Daren in this morning. Hello.
Hi, good morning, Pauline, and good morning to all that's tuned in. It's good to be here on this, as I told you, extra day of the year, February 29th.
Yes, it's so special today for so many reasons. So, usually when people come on the show, they're like, oh, 60 minutes, it's such a long time. But these discussions we get into it, we get some feedback as well, and we learn so much. So we're going to try and squeeze out as much from you today, Darren, as possible. So, we've had this conversation many times on this channel about cybersecurity, but I think today is different because we want to find out from someone like you in this space on the general conversation, what is cybersecurity? Because it's one of the more trending keywords on online right now when people are searching. So for those who, like me, need to break it down to the simplest of terms, what is cybersecurity?
And that's a really good question to start off the discussion because you could Google, what is cybersecurity and get a whole host of different answers. But it's really in the name, right? Cyber and security. So we could break it down into two words, right? I think we all know what security means, but let's look at cyber because I think that's where the key part of it is. Now, when we say cyber, different people might have different understandings of it, but it's really all internet related devices and applications. So everything that's connected to the internet at home or even in the office. So your websites, your servers, things like your security cameras, internet of thing devices. We have so many smart plugs and smart switches and so on. Those are all part of this whole cyberspace that we sometimes get lost in on a daily basis. And that forms part of cyber. So cybersecurity is the whole framework or understanding or concept of securing all of those devices, that exists in cyberspace. Some of us have, fridge that are connected to the internet and it'll ping you and tell you when you run out of eggs, and these sometimes we become a bit oblivious to some of the things that are connected and may not necessarily think about protecting those devices, because everything is connected to the internet now. And that's, the whole understanding of what cybersecurity is. It's being able to secure and protect all of those devices. And we'll get into, obviously, all the reasons why we need to secure those devices. Now, to go a little technical, these devices are referred to as endpoints. So I would probably say a few years ago, well, we may have only been concerned with antivirus software or firewalls for cybersecurity, implementations. But now we look at EDRs or endpoint detection. So all of these little things that we have around our house, iPads and smart switches and all the computers, even in the business, right? Switches and servers, they are all endpoints. And it means it's an opportunity for a hacker to come into our network or to come into our homes. So we are looking at cybersecurity, protecting all of those devices in the cyberspace.
Thanks for that, Darren, because, we think about the future, the conversation is usually around artificial intelligence, AI. And, it's like, oh, this is a scene out of the movie Terminator, but we're living in it now
That's right.
because, once you're connected to the internet, you have vulnerabilities that may happen to you. So you hear all these technical terms, you hear all these conversations, but you're like, what does this even mean? And when it comes to these technical technical terms, we're going to reference a lot of stuff that we would have read from your site, Daren, which is Cyber Safety TT. And I saw something along the lines of over 22 million spam messages emanating from Trinidad and Tobago between 2022 and 2023. So in this conversation, I mean, everybody who's watching this now and on the replay has an email address. It's as, important as a fingerprint in the world that we're living in. And when it comes to that, you have this thing called phishing.
Mm.
And I usually right click on a lot of emails weekly and I'm like phishing. So for those who are watching this who may even have used it and don't know what it is, what is phishing?
Nice. Well, I mean, fishing is something I'll probably want to do over the weekend, right? On a boat going on to Dhoray. But I know
Ideally.
today we're talking about phishing. And I apologize. That joke will never get stale with a cybersecurity professional, right? So we'll say, oh.
Nerd.
So yes, I mean, 22 million spam messages emanated from Trinidad. That means it came from servers that are, based or located anywhere in and around Trinidad and Tobago. What does that mean? It's a huge number. Phishing generally comes in the format of email. So that's why it's really important and it's often categorized as spam. So that's a lot of messages. Some might come to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago's inboxes. And some of those messages might actually, go to the rest of the world. Um, and there are multiple reasons as to what would have caused that, flood of spam messages. But let's start off with defining phishing, right? So it's a technique, really, and it's a technique that is not new. It's been used by hackers to trick people into performing some sort of action, which ultimately leads to you sharing some of your personal information, such as your username, passwords, credit card information, even. I know you mentioned, sometimes you click on a link, and that's a telltale sign of a phishing email. Now, phishing would have come in the form of text messages a few years back before email became as ubiquitous as it is today. And that's the most common part, text and or email. So many of us would have probably received a phishing email. And just to kind of describe what it probably looked like, it looked like an email that come from a valid or verified source. So a vendor that you're accustomed doing business with, it could be Amazon or Netflix or even your banks. Many local banks have had phishing emails sent to clients, which are fake emails, but they may have the bank logo and it may prompt you to do something. Generally, these phishing emails have a sense of urgency. So when you get it, you feel like you need to act almost immediately. So that's phishing. It's very common. But there are types of phishing. You did mention AI, and we'll probably get into that in a couple seconds because it's quite scary as to how AI and phishing and scam and spam and so on really is intertwining, making it extremely difficult, even for a seasoned professional like myself, to get duped by seeing something that's not real. So there's phishing, which we spoke about. There's also something called whaling, where the targets are the big fish, the CEOs, the CIOs, the directors, the managing directors of companies. So these emails are targeted towards these individuals because often they are the ones who would send an email saying, hey, go ahead and make this payment, or yes, we approve this. So the hackers know to sort of put extra effort into trying to target and compromise someone at that level. And then, as I mentioned, AI and phishing, there's something called phishing, which could be one out of two things: either voice messages or a fake phone call, where through the use of AI now, you can actually have a recording of someone, sending a message or speaking out. So let me give you an example. A parent might receive a call from a child, their child, and it might sound exactly like them and saying, hey, mom, I'm in a bind. I need some assistance. Can you either send me some money, or I can't remember what's the pin for my card. Can you just let me know what it is? And it would often come with some sense of urgency saying, hey, well, I have to pay school fees. I need to do this now. And you're thinking as a parent, hey, yeah, let me try and help us out and mitigate the situation as soon as possible. And then there are other cases where People in the business industry may receive a call from another vendor, or they will believe it's a vendor that they are accustomed doing business with. And they may ask them or instruct them to do certain things or ask for information. So that's very, very interesting, because sometimes you might receive that call as as a business person while you are preoccupied doing something else. So you're not paying too much attention to the scam that's really happening on your device, on your phone. And it has also extended to videos. So you would probably see some what is referred to as deep fakes. Those are videos. It might look like me, it might sound like me, but I never made those statements, and I was never recorded saying those things. But AI, can actually develop such videos, and that's quite scary. If you Google up actually an incident with respect to Chinese students and phishing, you would see that millions of dollars were scammed out of parents from China, based on scams similar to this. Now, the last one I want to refer to on this whole topic of phishing is called quishing. Yes, I know it's not very,
Wow.
yeah, not very, creative, but we all know QR codes, right? It's that little, black and white sort of grid-like image that we would scan on our phones to take us to a website or to show us something. So hackers realize, hey, I could just create a fake QR code, stick it over the real QR code. And whenever someone scans it, I'll take them to a phishing website or a fake website and ask them for the information, ask them to log in or send me some information such as credit cards. And that's become quite the scam, particularly in North America, because, QR codes are used at mass to do a lot of business transactions, particularly in that area. So it's something for us to be very well aware of, here today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to cover. We're looking at fishing, whaling, vishing, quishing. There's a lot of ishing
Phishing.
happening.
Yeah.
And for a lot of folks, it feels like a lot. It feels overwhelming. I could imagine people watching this going, oh my gosh, let me just get off the internet. What do you say to those people who, may want to learn but feel very overwhelmed by everything?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, again, even I feel overwhelmed sometimes. You might come in on a Monday morning and read about a whole new scam. It's like, wow, these scammers really just took the entire weekend to come up with this brand new plot or scheme to trick people. It's going to continue, and we really can't be afraid, but we must have some level of trepidation when we engage in this space. So, if one thing we can accomplish at the end of this session is for users to realize that we're engaging in a space where we get a lot of information, we benefit a lot as well, but there are many things that are used to trick us. So let's just look at a phishing email, and just to kind of keep it simple, some traits of a phishing email. I like to start off with bad grammar, often a spammer. And the reason for that is most of these phishing scams emanate out of non-English speaking countries, particularly African countries and Asian countries. And the original scam is written in, their native language, and they would use some sort of auto translation to actually get it into English. That turns out to be bad grammar. So when you're getting a phishing email that, is doesn't have proper English, that's a clear sign. It will have a sense of urgency or tell you that you're going to lose something. So that's something that you want to pay attention to as well. And as we mentioned earlier, it would definitely have a click here to follow up or do something. Excuse. So that's something that you want to pay attention to. And the link would definitely be something that you want to look at as well. Now, I also work at the University of the West Indies, and we do get some spam and phishing emails. It's really interesting to see that some of the messages have images that relate to official messages that we would use. So you might receive an email from Amazon with the Amazon logo, but it's not used the way in which it should. It might be huge and taking over much of the email. So, simple things like that, you have to really, really be mindful of. Now, if you do receive an email and you have doubts as to whether or not, one, my account is compromised, or I might lose space, or I might lose access to my account, ignore the email. Don't click on the link. Instead, go straight to the provider. So if that email came from Amazon, or it came from Netflix, or it came from eBay, or whoever it might be, don't click on any links on the email, because that could possibly send you to a fake website. Go straight to the vendor in question. Go straight to your Amazon account, straight to your Netflix account. If something is indeed wrong with your account, you'll get a prompt at that point in time and you can fix it. If nothing is wrong, then you made the right choice and you didn't click on the link in the email.
This is all so important. Like, it's very important right now. I mean, it's been important for years, but I think with the shift of many of us in remote working spaces, we're more prone to these attacks. And when you don't have, the closeness or the proximity of a colleague where you could get up and be like, "Did you really send me that?" I think
Mhm.
it's a lot to shift over to have the conversation. And we're going to go on a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how organizations can educate and empower employees to identify and avoid these attempts. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from Facebook, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing what you should know about cybersecurity. We're joined by Daren Dhoray. He is an IT professional with over 20 years of industry experience, and we want to continue the conversation because there's so much to cover in so little time. So far we've spoken about, what is cybersecurity. We have covered not just phishing, we've covered phishing, quishing, whaling. Oh my goodness. So when it comes to all these terminologies, for many of us, it doesn't mean anything until it affects you. So when it comes to running an organization, running a team, can you give us some insight, Daren, on how we can empower employees to identify and lower the risk of these attempts being successful?
Yeah. So, often the part of your whole cybersecurity strategy that's left out or the last to be addressed is cybersecurity awareness and training. I'm not too sure if the audience is aware, and I'm sure you might be aware. The weakest link in your whole cybersecurity framework is the human element. It's often, folks like you and I who make, click on the wrong message, put in a USB driver you weren't supposed to put it in, do things that, sort of go against what the policies and guidelines that were set out to ensure that we have a safe and secure network. So, cybersecurity awareness training is definitely, to me, shouldn't be at the tail end. It should be something that's ongoing and throughout the entire cybersecurity strategy. Um, we did mention before some of those traits for phishing emails. In terms of bad grammar, it's often a spammer. Malicious information with respect to fake links and so on. Those are things that you look out for in a phishing email. In the area of AI, we always have to question what we're seeing. Just yesterday or late last night, I made a post on cyber safety. And the post actually was a series of images which looked to be Americans from the 1980s. So, it's had this kind of brownish hues, and you see all the old televisions, and of course, we know the attire, and it looked like someone just scanned images from, the old photo album. But if you looked closely and you read the message that I posted with it, every single image there was AI generated. So you really didn't know what to believe when you looked at that post. Now there are some telltale signs. AI still has a bit of a problem, or at least the free and open source ones have a bit of a problem in generating fingers, and that's a dead giveaway. When you look at a AI generated image, the fingers look like it's alien. So for whatever reason, all the technology, and you can build out this really fantastic image, you could always look at someone's fingers or their toes, and it really looks off, and that's how you can pinpoint whether it's real or not. But then we're seeing some new images from some new videos from OpenAI, and that's quite scary. I mean, it could put production houses out of business. Um, but at the same time as well, you could probably get a video from someone that might be instructing you to do something, and it could be so very convincing. So seek second opinions. I know we have a habit of liking and sharing and acting almost immediately when we receive a post. Now we need to do a bit of diligence, and we being both personal and professional, we need to do that diligence to ensure that we're not spreading the virus or the spam message or the phishing videos, but we are also being you know sort of really really cautious, and ensuring that we keep a pretty decent area on the internet, and we don't continue sharing off these phishing and vishing and so on scams.
So, for me, I feel a little bit cautious when people start to use the word scary and AI, because we already have this like doomsday approach. And as a small business owner, for me, I'm like, okay, it's going to help me do this thing. You know what I mean? And I think for a lot of companies out there, including, Meta, which is the owner of Facebook,
Mhm.
um, looking at labeling AI generated content, which is
Mhm.
still a work in progress. Like, these companies are still trying to figure it out. So, not to worry for those who are watching this. We kind of, some of us are just all trying to figure it out as we go along, right? So, in terms of the weakest link being your employee, can you give us some, tips, maybe one or two tips as to how folks who have to manage a team remotely can reduce the likelihood of someone clicking on that link? Because within the financial sector, for instance, the Bank Association of Trinidad Tobago, we've done a lot of work in putting out that information. But it's also important for it to have internal communication with companies, because obviously, when it comes to the trust of a brand, banks are, up there. So when you see an email coming to your email inbox and it has the logo of the company that's managing your funds, you click it instantly. So maybe give us some insight, Darren, as how we can maybe slow down a little bit and reduce the likelihood of us, handing over our money to someone who is a Nigerian prince.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen, right? Um, you know, it really boils down to changing our approach to the way in which we operate, right? So, yes, you would have cybersecurity awareness training. We may have phishing simulators where intentionally the IT department may send, phishing emails to staff as a test. And if you click on it, then immediately you have to go back to do some training. I know some companies in the Gulf Coast who deal heavily with oil and this type of thing. And if you click on phishing emails at least more than 3 or 5 times, you are actually sanctioned to a certain extent where you may lose some of your pay, because they've realized that a simple click on that link could cost them millions or even billions, because we're speaking about the major conglomerates in the world. So it's something that you have to pay quite a lot of attention to. So intentionally introducing your employees to these scams and dealing with it in a controlled environment is definitely one surefire way of learning. And you will become more diligent and maybe skeptical. When you're reading emails and seeing, well, this does not sound right. From the bank's perspective, I've seen multiple messages from the banks, and it's really, really commendable, where they indicated that we will not ask you to do certain things. We won't ask you to update your username and password. We won't ask you to immediately go in and do something because you may lose access to your bank accounts, right? And that's something that is going to be a bit difficult for the average user to remember all the time, because these phishing emails and these scams tend to prey on our insecurities and our fears. So these hackers are professionals in their own right. Coming on to the end of the month, when you have paid, that's when you might get a series of financial fraud emails, right, to make you do certain things in your bank account because you probably have a bit more cash at that point in time that you would have had at the beginning of the month. So those are things that you have to bear in mind as well. If the offer or the email seems too good to be true, then chances are it probably is. I always say refer to the original site, refer to the vendor. Don't click on the email. If you receive an email from any particular bank and it seems to be requesting you to perform some sort of action, again, forget the email. Visit the bank website, log on to your online banking in a safe and secure manner, by the way. So that means not in a cyber cafe and not on some free Wi-Fi. You want to do that at home or maybe in the office. And once you log in into that account, if something is genuinely wrong, you'll be prompted at that point in time. So it's a bit of a rehash of what we mentioned before, but it's really about education. It's about awareness. It's about keeping our guard up and not being too laissez-faire with respect to how we interact and operate in this space. I would probably close off on this one by saying, when we interact with social media platforms and gaming platforms, we tend to, share a bit of information, maybe a bit too much information. Sometimes it might not be all at once, but it might be over a period. And this information that we share can easily be correlated by a hacker to build, an attack profile on an individual, right? So let's just say I have social media accounts across multiple platforms. In one, I might put my phone number. In another, I might put my email address. In another, I might slip up and put my actual physical address. Most of the times, those can be used as your security response answers to questions to gain access to, very secure sites such as your internet banking. So once someone can actually, curate all of your online accounts and get this, attack profile on you, it'll help them, gain access to you. Pauline, I don't know if you ever saw any of these on Facebook in particular. It's a question that might be asked by a random account which you're not a friend with, and they might say, "Hey, what's your favorite movie?" Or "When was the last time you did this?" Or "What's your anniversary?" And all of those things, people gravitate so quickly towards answering because it brings a sense of nostalgia, and you feel kind of good inside about sharing this. Hey, I was married for 25 years, and you want to boast, you know. Um, but you're actually sharing quite possibly the same type of information that you might use as your answers to your security questions. And I've realized that that's what these sites do. They are all scams. We could probably, use that with a pinch of salt to collate information from the public at mass, to build a database of answers that they can use when they are trying to compromise particular accounts. So again, it might be fun to interact with these things, but best be very, very cautious in terms of what you share, and other than just what you click, but the information that you share online as well.
Wow. And it's so interesting you mentioned that social media aspect because many of us, I mean, it's been reported we have a loneliness epidemic. People are basically searching for that human connection online. And a lot of us can't separate the reality from
Yeah.
what's happening. And it's a lot of multitasking as well. So we have to almost have an outer body experience and just press pause when it comes to interacting online. And we have this work from home movement as well. But we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back we're going to talk a little bit more on cloud adoption, because people hear the word cloud and they think it's this like, oh, what is this? But you're on Facebook, you're using the cloud. You're on the email, you're using the cloud. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that after the break.
But that was like my first experience with money. Very, very first experience.
I've been in banking since I was a teenager.
And welcome back to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from YouTube, thank you so much. Don't forget to follow our page and subscribe to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing what you should know about cybersecurity. We're joined by Daren. He is an IT professional with over 20 years of experience and the founder of Cyber Safety T Foundation. So we're going to reference some of the information that he has on that website, which we're going to put in the comment section. I think the idea of cybersecurity is not siloed to an industry. It affects all of us because we are connected online. So when we talk about cyber attacks and cybersecurity, we need to talk about cloud. First and foremost, Daren would have covered. We started talking about cybersecurity, what it is, what is phishing, and you can check all those things when this live is over. You can click the replay to learn more. But we want to cover what is cloud adoption, because I used to work at Microsoft and it was quite a experience because people are like, this cloud thing, what's the cloud? So for those out there who may not understand, Daren, just give us some idea, what is cloud adoption?
Sure thing. And I think there's still some misnomers. Cloud is something far away up in the sky. But I mean, technically, it is something that's far away from you. Cloud adoption really refers to a strategy to sort of migrate your digital assets. Your digital data and servers and so on from on-site, right, from a local premise, to servers that are actually hosted remotely and accessible on the internet. And the last part is what we need to pay attention to. So whereas, in the past, if you may have not needed to connect to the internet to maybe pull down a file or a document from your file server, and now you have to actually connect to the internet, that means you would have migrated to the cloud. And by the cloud, we mean, a lot of tools that many of us might be familiar with. It's things like OneDrive and Google Drive and Dropbox. Those are all spaces that exist in the World Wide Web that are, foreign to us. It's not local to our servers. Now, it doesn't have to be outside of Trinidad and Tobago. A local company could migrate to the cloud to a data center that's based right in Trinidad and Tobago, but it's just not housed locally. Most folks would consider cloud adoption because it generally forms part of their digital transformation strategy, right? It's part of it because you can leverage from a lot of benefits by moving to the cloud. While at the same time, there are some cons and some things that you need to be aware of. But essentially, as I indicated, cloud adoption is really a strategy to migrate your digital assets from local servers to one that's managed on the internet remotely. So you sort of take a little bit of headache off, your folks within the business, within the organization who might have been responsible for managing the servers, ensuring, that they are secure, updated, and so on. And you probably free up their time a little bit to look at more pressing factors. So you may find that, individuals who might have been what we refer to as DBAs or server administrators, they can retool themselves now, to cloud administrators or cloud engineers, which is a very lucrative field right now. And that could be even a new field that, if we have any perspectives or students that are sitting in on, that's definitely an area that you could get, involved in. So cloud adoption is really, moving your digital assets, moving your servers and so on from a local spot over into the, somewhere that's accessible on the internet. And as I said, it doesn't have to be in another country, which it often usually is, but it can also be migrated to a site right here in Trinidad and Tobago within the region. But basically, you don't have physical access to that server.
Yeah, those are, I think a lot of us may not be able to completely wrap our heads around the idea of our data. Like when we're putting all this information in Facebook and the social media platforms, it's being stored somewhere in the world, right?
That's right.
So a lot of folks aren't putting that together because we're busy connecting with different groups online. Like there's one called the interior design of Trinidad and Tobago, and the engagement on those posts are insane. So people are uploading photos of their bedrooms, Christmas time, and things like that, and no one's thinking, where is this going, right? Um, and I'm going to reference one of the pieces of data from the site. There was 125% of the reported cyber attacks in 2020 compared to 2019. This has been attributed to the mass movement of working from home. So when it comes to organizations having to not just shift their mindset and the way how they do things, and I think also reduction in budgets, let's be honest, because some folks are no longer paying rent as one of their line items for expenses, which is great. But what do you say to an entrepreneur, a business owner who has that team and now may have some extra cash, but not necessarily thinking about using some of that money to educate? Because I think that is a line item in a business owner's budget that they're not even thinking about.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it, right? Where you sort of free up some resources. It might be human resource and skilled resources, and even financial resources in a move to the cloud, right? And just to kind of not create the perception that you will not necessarily need to have a person. Remember I mentioned the need to retool some stuff. You might have a cloud engineer, so you probably wouldn't be able to give up a salary, but you might be able to retool someone to actually help manage and mitigate what's going on in the cloud. I have seen businesses and organizations sort of throw their hands up when they move to the cloud and said, all right, the provider will handle everything. And then something happens and you question, well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? So you still need to be a little bit diligent with respect to, even though your servers are actually based in the cloud. And in terms of protecting that information and infrastructure, you would want to ensure that you set up your proper security protocols that work within your own arrangement. So think about it like this: you have your house and your front door is open. Nobody might know that the front door is ajar or whatever, because you're still kind of like in a closed environment right within your little hometown. But take that house and put it up on a video camera for the world to see, and the camera is pointing at the door. Now everybody in the world kind of knows, hey, maybe that door is open. Let's knock on it and see. So that's something kind of like what might happen, if you move your servers into the cloud. It might become, it might move to a space that's a bit more public, in the sense of, maybe more people might be looking in on it. Now, you do have private clouds and we do have things like VPN and so on, which would protect it. But again, not everyone may pay for that level of cloud infrastructure. Some folks might just move things into the cloud and forget the security aspect and elements of it, right? We also tend to have this this attitude of just giving access to any and anybody out of convenience. That might be okay if we are on a local environment and we don't have too many praying eyes, or the possibilities of hackers finding our servers because it's on a local network that might not have internet connectivity. But then we take that and we put it in the cloud with all the unnecessary levels of access. A developer might say, hey, I needed to pull out this file one time alone. They gain access. No need to access it ever again, but their account still resides on that server. So a bit of diligence, and this is where maybe the cloud engineer would come in, the security personnel would sort of come in to work on ensuring that it is something that is secure. So whereas we would have, as you may have mentioned, sort of saved a little bit on one end by, maybe migrating and not having the resources to or needing the resources to manage the servers. You take that spend and you implement it from a security perspective, right? You look at access controls, connectivity back to home, use of VPN, all of those different things. So you probably might not save too much in the long run, but you may more than likely be moving funds from one area to the next, which, it's kind of positive for the organization because now they are kind of forced to implement, a really good and robust cybersecurity strategy, which they may have done prior to moving to the cloud.
And, for many of us, this would be a brand new concept. So let's elaborate a little bit more on what this budget will look like. What do you think a company that's shifting from on-premise to saying, okay, you guys can work from home, or, a lot of folks are having hybrid, so you can work 2 days at home and 3 days at the office. What are the top three things that business shifting over should be spending their money in the cybersecurity space?
Gotcha. That's an interesting one, Pauline, because there are so many different facets that we could look at from a spend and a budget and determining what we need to spend on. But let me sort of break it down. This would apply whether you're in the cloud or not, and I think that's probably the better approach because whether you're in the cloud or not, you still have to budget, right, for your IT spend. Now, the recommended sort of spend of your overall IT budget is anywhere between 7 to 20%. So if you have your overall IT spend, you should ideally be spending between 7 to 20%. That has been showcased to be just about or under average in terms of having all of the adequate facilities to protect your infrastructure. In real, it's probably closer to 1 to 5%, right, in terms of what the overall spend is. Now, Gartner and all of these, major bodies have shown that businesses at large are spending more in cybersecurity. So maybe those figures, might go up over the next few years, and we're hoping that it does. But before you decide, what, I'm going to take $50,000 or $100,000 or $10,000 and put it towards, my IT spend, I would quickly recommend, firstly, right, you do what is called like a vulnerability assessment on your organization, that is your network at large, and identify, any sort of weaknesses that you have. So you do a vulnerability assessment on your network. And you might realize, hey, there are some things that I could fix without having to spend. And then there are other things that, I might actually have to put some money into, in terms of dealing with these vulnerabilities. So let me give you a nice analogy. Sometimes we have to decide whether we want to go with third-party insurance or fully comprehensive. Good. So how could we come to that decision other than, if we really don't have the finances to do fully comprehensive? Or we just say, do we really need fully comprehensive? So if you're driving up and down the highway on a regular basis, then there's a possibility or the propensity for you to probably have something happen to your vehicle might be higher than if you're just doing, around the town driving. So some individual might say, okay, fine, based on my assessment of what I'm going to do with my vehicle, I think I could accept the risk of, having to pay less for this type of insurance. And that's kind of the strategy that you want to look at, right? So you want to implement a risk-based approach to dealing with cybersecurity. So you do your vulnerability assessment, you see, okay, fine, we have these 5 areas that, we probably need to address. It may vary from one place to the next. And then now you look at, okay, so there are those 5 areas. Out of those 5 areas, what's the risk associated with it? How bad would it be for my organization if that risk, is honored, for want of a better word, or it's impacted by a hacker? Would it cripple my business? Would it shut me down for an hour? Could I afford to be down for an hour? What is my downtime cost? Those are questions that you will now start to ask yourself and determine, okay, fine. If it's going to cost me $100,000 to be down, I have no problem paying $10,000 to mitigate that in the future. But of course, if it's costing you $100 to be down for an hour, you're probably going to find it a bit more difficult to justify paying $10,000 to combat that particular vulnerability. So again, you implement a risk-based approach to dealing with cybersecurity. You prioritize your high risks, and that's where you could decide, okay, fine, I already have the money to spend it. I'll go ahead and spend, or you start budgeting for it going forward. Now, luckily for Trinidad and Tobago, and I have to say thanks to the budget request that was made last year. I believe the cybersecurity tax break was implemented in January of this year, and that's up to $500,000 of tax break incentives for organizations that want to implement cybersecurity measures. So I believe it's enacted. I think you can, look at, claiming on those breaks. But if organizations are unaware, you could simply search on the different government websites to find out more about it. I actually wrote an article on CyberSafeTT on how an organization could utilize that $500,000 to build a near complete or near perfect cybersecurity strategy, from purchasing of software to hardware to training and so on. So it's a nice little rubric that you can follow, and you don't have to spend the full 500,000. I think it's probably started at much lower, but it gives you an idea of all the different areas that you should approach. So really and truly, Pauline, it's doing that vulnerability assessment and creating some sort of risk-based approach to decide which are the areas that I should approach first, because it will be most impactful to my business if I don't address those issues.
And those are such great points, Darren. I think shout out to Val Walcott. The risk assessment conversation is extremely important. And I would like to add, you're mentioning if you lose $100, maybe not want to invest in it. But a lot of times as well, it's not just about that physical value, it's about the association of your brand.
Reputational
So
risk.
if
That's correct.
exactly, so if for whatever reason something happened and you didn't necessarily make a huge loss, but the reality is, if someone is associating a possible attack based on your website, we're
Yeah.
not going to go back to your website as consumers,
Yeah.
right? So
Correct.
that's going to be even larger. So I
Yes.
mean, all of these things we have to think about, and as business owners, I know it's a lot, but you chose this life. It's not my fault. And that's such great insight about the tax breaks. If you want to learn more about cybersafeTT.com, you can just check the comment section. It's right there somewhere. So we're going to go on a quick break. But when we come back, we just want to cover some of the myths around cybersecurity and the importance of collaboration, because a lot of times we are head down doing our jobs, but we have to work as a team in order to mitigate this risk of someone sliding into our emails and trying to get our information. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're doing so from Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing what you should know about cybersecurity with Daren Dhoray. So, within the IT space, there are a lot of different roles and responsibilities. And I don't know you folks out there who have parents to be like, hey, can you fix this because you work on the computer? But within the IT space, there's a specialization in cybersecurity. So we have covered a lot. You can definitely check out this video when we finish the live stream. We've discussed phishing, we've discussed cybersecurity and what it means, as well as cloud adoption. But within the cybersecurity space, there are a lot of myths. And I've seen the data where a lot of us are Googling and searching what is cybersecurity. But in the context of someone who's watching this who has a business, Daren, I would like you to explain to them, you know, this idea of like putting all this money into cybersecurity versus the effort and the team collaboration that's needed.
Yeah. You know, I probably will not win too many fans with this statement, but it's the reality of the situation. You don't need to have an ultimate budget to protect yourself online, right? There are so many different mitigation strategies that you can look at. I mean, let's just even start off with the small business, right? They may not necessarily have in-house IT expertise, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy that you mentioned that in the area of computer science there are many different disciplines. So you can actually be a network engineer and really and truly not have any knowledge about web development at all whatsoever, which is a whole different field in computer science, right? So that's important for our employers to understand that it shouldn't really be what we like to refer to as jack of all trades, right? It really shouldn't be that. You need to have specialists in the fields. And if you cannot hire multiple individuals in the security area, then there is something called IT service management. Those are managed services, I should say, where you have companies who would come in and act as, a full IT service provider, a company basically. And what they're going to do, they're going to monitor your computers, monitor stuff. And if something goes wrong, they can act and fix it. And you really only pay on incidents. So that could significantly reduce your budget or budget allocations for looking to hire, resources and skilled resources. Now, sometimes those skilled resources worked with those managed service providers, right? So it's a surefire way, I think, of ensuring that you have some level of protection. And we looked at taking a risk-based assessment approach to trying to figure out where I should prioritize my spend, right? And I think that's something that we should definitely look at. So you don't necessarily need to have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in your budget to address the cybersecurity matter. Of course, it really depends on the size of the organization, right, Pauline? If you are a Fortune 500 multi-million-dollar company, you probably will need to spend some money. But it's not to say that it's something that you could completely ignore if you don't have the funds to do so.
That jack of all trades conversation is applicable across
The industry,
the
everywhere. Yeah.
especially when it comes to the online space, like creators, for instance. People believe that anybody could do it. So you have a phone and you just, pointing and shooting and anybody could do it. But the reality is
It's a skill.
exactly, it's a specialization that you have to pay for. So the idea of someone being good at social media, fixing your laptop,
And looking after your cybersecurity. Yeah.
it's just, can we start a movement to stop that, please? Can
Yes, I
anybody
will.
just,
I will spearhead that. I will spearhead that.
yes, I would join that Facebook group in a minute. So let's just figure out a way to, shift that conversation. So when it comes to, because we're gonna wrap it up in a minute. When it comes to, this broader conversation about this digital ecosystem, because a lot of us are, there are obviously these risks, but a lot of us are benefiting a lot. It's creating a space that never was there before, meaning, there are a lot of big players with deep pockets, but then you have someone who's able to use their phone and access an audience and access revenue that they would have never been able to access before. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, we're not just limiting it to organizations, but we're looking at people who are freelancers.
Mhm.
So, what is the common thread, do you think, a piece of advice to give to anybody who's watching this? And, a lot of us are making money online. what is the main step anyone should take right now to reduce their risk of being scammed?
Yeah. So I mean, we covered a lot of significant points throughout the entire session this morning. And I think one thing that maybe, as you say, entrepreneurs and the smaller business owners might tend to ignore is the information that's coming to them. So they may receive emails from their vendors, from if you're on Windows, for example, from the operating system providers, Microsoft, saying, hey, we need you to actually patch this because we found a vulnerability that might impact your business. And we get out in the middle of reading an email or just before we go to call a client, and it's like, okay, I'll see to that later. And we know that later never really comes. And what that means is it leaves that door open for that vulnerability to impact on us. So we need to, as small business owners, and it probably happens at large scale as well, be very cognizant of the fact that, hey, we are sometimes receiving this information to protect us and to protect our systems. So that 10 minutes of inconvenience that you might have to reboot the machine and apply the patch and so on is nothing compared to 10 days of downtime and no access to your services or systems, right? So pay attention to those updates. We also have a lot of very, very knowledgeable folks in the field. I would, advise anyone, small or big companies, join our LinkedIn groups. We have so many, really talented folks: Shiva Parasaram, Alex Sam, TT Cert, Trinidad Tobago, Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. They all send updates on LinkedIn and different forms. They have newsletters, mailing lists that you could join to keep you up to date in terms of what's happening, what you probably should be looking out for, the ones you need to pay a bit more attention to, and so on. So I think we do have a lot of resources locally. I know you mentioned in terms of collaboration and so on. So sharing this information. We don't have a habit of reporting, and I think it's because it's not legislated, reporting cybersecurity incidents or cybercrime in Trinidad and Tobago. And because of that, if we kind of stay away from it, we're going to have that issue of the world at large, or our country at large, not knowing how bad it is. So I think we need to have this sort of habit of reporting cybercrime, so that the rest of the industry would know, okay, hey, this happened, I probably need to check this to ensure it doesn't happen to me. Because you often have in a particular region repeat offenders of the same vulnerability, because the hackers realize, hey, no one in this area is looking at this particular vulnerability, so let's prey on it. So if it's shared and the information is known, then it could go a long way to assisting other individuals in terms of they not falling prey to it as well.
Thank you so much for that, Daren. I think I'd like to add, the idea of reporting being, scammed. There's this sense of fear that, and then there are people who go online and go like, oh, I can't believe you fell for that. That doesn't help us move along to expose these people, because the more silent you are, the more times this will happen to someone else.
Yeah.
So I think, keyboard warriors, can we support people and not shame them when they actually do share their experiences?
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, Daren, I also want to, outside of thanking you for sharing such a wealth of knowledge, we have put some links online on the comment section, because on the learn.cybersafety.com, there's some courses. One that very intriguing, internet addiction test. I can tell you that will be one I'll probably pass. So I think that's a great way for us to start and just, shift into our mental health. But also the cyber safety students is a course that you can check out. These things are available locally. In addition to that, there are cybersecurity courses available for free on Google. We've put that in the comment section as well. So thanks again to Daren for joining us today. I learned a lot. I hope you did as well. on sharing insight on what you should know about cybersecurity. So don't forget to sign up to be notified for our next live show via the link in the comments. And as always, be sure to follow our page. If you're doing so on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. And I will see you soon. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.